I often start by just showing you that picture, and I ask people now, whose hands are those? Are they your hands? Are they the politicians? Are they world leaders? And how are those hands holding our fragile earth these days? Are we squeezing it or are we holding it gently? And that is just asking you to go to your heart and ask, how am I doing in our world of today? And it's not only that, it's also how am I doing, how am I holding our Mother Earth, but also how am I prepared to hand it on to other people as I move on in life. So what I'm going to look at is just very briefly and quite quickly is where are we? And then how did we get here? What is driving us that we are in the state we are in at the moment? And that talks about spirituality. And when I speak about spirituality, I want you to think about it very, very basically. What gets you up in the morning to do what you do? What is your driving underlying value force that gets you to do that? Your spirituality might mean that you show it in a religious practice or something else. For example, what is Donald Trump's spirituality that he does what he does? You might question all of that. What was Mother Teresa's spirituality to do what she did? She played it out in a particular religious practice and religious community. So I want you to think of that. What is your value system that gets you up in the morning to do what you do and to work with your community? So briefly, what is the state of our planet? Now, normally I show a little video on this, and it shows, where are we at the moment in this 21st century? And you know about climate change. We see the videos of floods, the wildfires, all the refugees moving, etc., the damage. And that is basically because of the energy crisis. We've been using fossil fuels all our lives, and we are changing the chemistry of our planet. And this is being addressed because it's the failure of our economic, political, cultural, education, and religious systems that we've allowed this to happen. We haven't questioned this way of doing things since the Industrial Revolution. And so we have social, political, economic inequality. There's unrest, there's war, there are refugees, there's migrants. We've had the COVID-19. There are other pandemics happening in our world. And in all of this, we are asked as leaders, as educators, as spiritual people, how are we to be people of hope? How do we bring hope to our world of today? So those are the challenges. And at the same time, our world population is increasing in size. And as you know, India is the most populated state on the planet. And they're projecting around 2050 that there will be 10 billion people on our planet. How do we cope with all that? So that's very briefly and very quickly the state we are in. So how did we get here? What is our driving force? And to do this, I go all the way back to the world and us, and those big questions. Where did everything come from? Who made the world? Why are we here? Why am I here? And to answer this, we go back all the way to answering these very big questions. And there are two ways. First of all, with storytelling and modern science. Now, science and religion and storytelling are in a great debate at the moment, but both of them need each other. In the modern world, each needs each other. Science is knowledge through measurement, through the senses, what we can see. We speak about matter and we measure it, etc., and we draw conclusions. But faith, spirituality, religion is a leap in the dark. We try to answer those big, mysterious questions that knowledge or science cannot answer. And science without religion is lame, and religion without science is blind. And that was a famous scientist, Albert Einstein. And we are doing this in our education system very, very much, as you as teachers would know. we're integrating science and religion and faith-based teaching, etc. Now, if I go back and I talk about this, is every culture, every spirituality, every group of nation has a creation myth, which is an imaginary story that uses symbols to speak about reality, but a reality that is beyond our understanding. And many cultures, ancient and modern, have creation myths, creation stories that provide ways of thinking about the mystery of our universe, the big why questions, and the world and our presence in it. And in terms of the Christian story, it's the Bible cosmology. And if you think back, whenever this was written, thousands of years ago, what scientific instruments people had were just the naked eye. And if you looked up at the heavens, you'd see the sun moving from east to west, etc., depending on what hemisphere you're in. And you'd, conclude that the sun is going around the earth. Today we know, because of scientific measurements and Galileo, the earth is going around the sun. But this was their cosmology. They didn't have the sophisticated scientific instruments we have today to make conclusions and then to develop our cosmology, as we call it. The Bible cosmology is the Genesis story of the Bible, the 6 and 7 days. Excuse me. But this is also based on the time the Israelites spent in Babylon, because they also had a creation story based on this type of thing. So every culture's got this that gives meaning to their lives. Okay. Now, if I just break up the Genesis story, and I know in India, you've got a multi-faith society, not all Christian, etc. Christianity is probably a minority in your school. But if I just look at this one quote from Genesis, be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and subdue it. Gosh, and I think, haven't we done that? And we base this on probably a hierarchical order of our understanding of the creation spirituality. That you've got inorganic matter, then you've got animals and plants, human beings, the angels or the spirit world, and God somewhere in transcendence. And this is the hierarchical order, one better than the other. And even Western theology and philosophy has divided the human being up into spirit, mind, and body. But that type of division can lead to a working ethic that brings about very bad things in our world and inequality. And some of those I could list as being the following. We have ideas about the divine. We speak in terms of, I've got an idea, I've got a theory about it. We speak in the idea of transcendence, dualism, us and them, patriarchy, man is better than the woman, separation, fear of the other, aloneness, individual autonomy, power over, control, status, ownership, property. Property is a thing where we own things. And very often, even in human culture, certain human beings are owned by others. We own our earth. We can divide it up and buy and sell it. And that leads to total inequality, and whatever we call nationhoods are divided up this way, etc., one more powerful than the other. So that hierarchical idea often has led to various forms of tribalism around religion, ethnicity, and nationhood. And we define our identity over and against everybody else. I am better than you. My sports team is better than yours, etc., etc., etc. And if you think of it, our world is very much in this type of mode, really, if you think what's going on in our world of today. So I want you to just hold that kind of model or understanding in your mind at the moment. And when we move on to our modern age, and in our modern age, we've had incredible scientific instruments that were launched out into space and could measure radiation and everything like that out in space, the Hubble telescope, and recently the Webb telescope. And they worked out, the scientists have worked out about the origins of our universe through radiation, etc. And this is known as the universe story. Now, normally I would show a 15-minute video at this stage about this, but we just haven't got time. But it speaks about the origin of our universe 13.7 billion years ago, when time and space came into existence. And then the first atoms were, and they coagulated to form matter, etc., etc. And then we had the exploding stars leading to the secondary stars, and the debris of those, our sun is a secondary star, and the debris of those coagulated around the sun and formed our planetary system, etc., etc. And today, they would speak, there are over 100,000 of galaxies in our universe. Why all that? Where is the meaning to all of that? What is the creative spirit behind that? And the scientists would speak about this, our universe has been expanding at just the right rate to allow life to form. And at the moment, we are interconnected with every life form in our world that has developed over these many, many years. And we have become a life form that has got reflective consciousness about it. So they speak about the web of life as we know it now. All the strands over these billions of years that have connected and brought life and consciousness to its present state. And I want you to think about this. The divine is in everything, and everything is in the divine. God, the divine, the creative spirit, wisdom, whatever word you'd like to use, brings about its presence in our world of today through this ongoing creation and evolution. And we are somewhere in this. We are part of this web of life. We connected to everything in our DNA. The original atoms that were made are part of us at the moment. We are not separate. We weren't parachuted in somewhere and landed on our Mother Earth. We are connected to every life form, inorganic, etc. And if we break this web of life by what we are doing, we are destroying this presence of the web of life. And sadly, we are doing this in a terrible way at the moment through our climate change that is occurring, etc. We are destroying the chemistry that supports the web of life. So I want you to think of that. But if we have this model, what does this lead to? It's a way of saying we experience the divine. There's awe, there's mystery, there's interconnectedness, there's relational, it's community, it's diversity, there's the creative spirit in this, interiority, possibility, and interrelatedness. So I want you to think of those words. I might just go back to that. When you're thinking about this whole idea of our universe and our place in it, and what it means to be a human being in it at the moment. So this is just from a Christian perspective, the first book of Revelation. The universe is the first book of God's revelation. The universe. Ever before any sacred text was written, God was self-revealing through the unfolding universe story. And a mistake in our understanding of creation will necessarily cause a mistake in our understanding of God. What is your understanding as best you can about the divine? And that is what Thomas Aquinas is challenging us about. Creation is an ongoing evolutionary process. It's ongoing at the moment. Consciousness is an ongoing dynamic process. And God's revelation through creation is a dynamic, ongoing process. Revelation never ends. And that's what I challenge people to try and do, to think about each day as God's gift and God's revealing God's self through what is happening each day. It's an ongoing process. And to be open to that is the salvific process, salvation. Excuse me. So now, what can we learn from this universe story? And the three things which I'm going to do very briefly are differentiation and uniqueness, interiority and subjectivity, excuse me, and communion and relationship. If you think about everything is different in our world. To be in the universe is to be different. Now, excuse me, we must learn to celebrate difference. How do I see differentiation in my own life? Do I see it among people that I live? Do I nurture it or do I inhibit it? How can we celebrate and incorporate it in the way we live? We do not handle difference very well in our world of today. And the second thing is interiority or subjectivity. Everything is a subject, has got an interior growth to be what it's meant to be. It's not an object. A tree is not an object that we can just chop down. Every tree is different. Every leaf on the tree is different, and it's got the potential to be what it's meant to be. Do we allow that to happen? Or do we just regard it as being property that we can do with what we like? So every single organism has an innate potential to grow, develop, and blossom to its full potential. Yet everything, in inverted commas, do we call it a thing? Person has inner depths which we can never fully know or understand. Even your closest neighbor and friend, you don't know the inner depths of that person. You can maybe understand a little bit about that. So to regard them as people of potential, subjects, not objects. And the third one is communion. Everything is related, as we said in the web of life. Is the coming together of all things in mutual interdependence.
All right, teachers. So this is your dashboard. This is how your dashboard will look like.
Nothing attains its full potential without interconnectedness. So whenever we do anything, we must think of this mutual interdependence
Now, what you need to do, you have everything on your.
Now, if you look at a healthy ecosystem anywhere, it could be a wetland or a lovely forest grove or something, there's continual birth, life, and death. And the energy created from the death brings forth new life. And there's this continual change and a beauty about it, and everything works together. We don't think about that so much in our human world, if I can speak about that. But every transformation in life comes about through very much love and a lot of suffering. Think about a mother bringing up a child, the amount of love and suffering she has to go with. But it's not negative suffering. It's positive something to bring about transformation in our world of today. But so much of the suffering in our world of today is negative. It doesn't bring about transformation. But this process is necessary for the ongoing evolution of our world of today. So I'm more or less going to just go through this very quickly. In our earth, it's governed by the laws of nature. We didn't devise these. And the divine, the creator spirit works through these processes and laws, gravity, etc., etc. We can't change those. So therefore, we belong to the earth. We come from it, we are sustained by it, and in the end, we return to it. And human thought and love are not something injected into the universe from without, but are the flowering in us of these deeply cosmic energies. So my challenge now is how does an evolving understanding of the emergent humanist story impact on how we live? And how do we make the principles of differentiation, interiority, and community a reality in our lives? Now, I've gone through all this very quickly, and I just have to do that. Sorry about this. But I've tried to show two different worldviews. One on the left, the earth was created for us to use as we wish. There's a radical discontinuity between human and non-human. We humans are the ultimate goal of creation. The earth is infinite and can support continuous economic growth. And the situation today is normal. We can keep on this path indefinitely. And on the right-hand side, what are the new things we can do for our understanding? The earth is a communion of subjects, not a collection of objects. A communion. The earth is primary, the human is derivative. Nothing is itself without everything else. And all creativity is a sacrament revealing the presence of God. Life and non-life intertwine in an exquisite dance. Neither is primary nor secondary. And we are genetically related relative to every creature which has ever lived on earth, to every creature living now. And we need to live sustainably and in harmony with Earth's system. Now, if you look at those two kind of models, where are you as a person? Where is your school? Where is your community? Where is your country? Where is your nation? Where are the politicians? Where are the economists? Where is the law? The law is basically on the left-hand side, because the only thing that's got personhood is the human being or a corporation. Everything else is property to be divided up and sold. In some cultures, animals have got a sacred nature. But generally in our world, Western culture, it's property. Think of your politicians. What are they operating out of? And I think most of us will admit we're somewhere in between. And very often we fall back to the left-hand side. We try to aspire to the right-hand side. And Pope Francis in Laudato Si, and what we're going to move on to, is trying to encourage us to take the right-hand side as our operating principle. So, how are we to respond to what we have seen and heard and understood? So we can have a very kind of flippant attitude. So what? That's it. Or we can pick and choose what suits us. Or can we embrace advance in our understanding that science presents us with in order to deepen our response to what lies at the heart of it? So I'll go on to the third question now. What is possible for the future? And in 2015 was an incredible year when you think about it. We had the sustainability goals, and I know you in the school community, you do incredible work on all that. We had the Paris Climate Change Agreement, and we also had Pope Francis launching his Laudato Si encyclical, Care for Our Common Home. And in Laudato Si, there are 6 chapters. It's quite amazing what is happening to our common home. The gospel of creation, kind of similar to what we just tried to go through very quickly. The human roots of this ecological crisis. Integral ecology, lines of approach and action, ecological education and spirituality. And if you think of Laudato Si and the sustainability goals, what is different in all this is Pope Francis brings the spirituality content into it. And that is so important. He would say, we don't just have an ecological crisis, we have a spirituality crisis. And our way of addressing this is through spirituality. So I just take two quotes from the Laudato Si, and this to me is a beautiful one. When we can see God, the divine, reflected in all that exists, our hearts are moved to praise the Lord for all his creatures and to worship in union with him. Beautiful quote. Another one, the universe unfolds in God who fills it completely. And hence there is a mystical meaning to be found in a leaf, in a mountain trail, in a dewdrop, in a poor person's face. So it's not God out there somewhere manipulating him, but God is present in everything. There's mystical meaning to be found in every aspect of life. It's beautiful. So one of the things he challenges us to is integral ecology, that takes us to the heart of what it is to be human. And Pope Francis says we've got to see this in a continuous cycle or circle. See scientifically, what is the science telling us? The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change is telling us what we're doing wrong. Evaluate this ethically, and then bring our spirituality into it, and then act effectively. Very often in our world of today, we see what's happening and we just go and act. We forget about the ethics of the action and the spirituality of the action. Some of the things that are being put into practice, etc., are not ethically correct, and they don't bring us to be reflecting spiritually where we are part of the web of life, and we are supposed to be reflecting consciously on what we're doing. Still, the acting still brings about injustice, inequality, etc., in what we're doing to try and avert climate change. So this cycle is so, so important. Now, this is what Grace has asked me to concentrate a little bit on. The 7 goals of Laudato Si, the Laudato Si action platform, and its response to the cry of the earth, response to the cry of poor. There's an ecological crisis and a social crisis. Those two on the top. And to address this is ecological economics, adoption of simple lifestyles, ecological education, ecological spirituality, and community engagement and participatory action. We cannot do this on our own. We've got to be with other people doing this. So it's not just that you concentrate on one. It's the same as a sustainability goal. To do one, you've got to do them all. We've got to do all of these. So very briefly, I'm going to go through each of these. I'm just going to show it on the screen and you can look at them. Now, the Sunil does a lot on this, and I'm sure he's shared a lot on this with you. So, some suggested action. So first of all, the cry of the earth. Look at that, what's on the screen. Climate change action. Biodiversity loss. Water conservation and land protection. A lot of that we can do in our own school community in certain ways. The cry of the poor. Promoting indigenous leadership and land rights. We get involved in that around in our local community. Solidarity with vulnerable people. There's a spelling error there, sorry. Promoting indigenous culture and leadership. How do we bring this into our school syllabus, etc.? sharing human and financial resources, holding social or ecological action days. Ecological economics. Our economy is a linear economy. We blow up the earth, we manufacture something, we distribute it and we sell it, and then we throw the rest into the dump. We've got to form a circular economy. And that is a very important thing in a school, where you can audit how your school purchases are made, etc. Is it a circular economy, or is it just buy, use, throw away? Divest from fossil fuels and any other activity harmful to people and planet. Ensure dignity of workers, livable wages and benefits, cooperative management practices. This one is very important at the bottom. Teach and practice gift economy value. The free giving and good of goods and services, a bit of a spelling error, sorry, without the expectation to financial compensation. Our idea of volunteer days to clean up litter, clean waterways, prepare meals for homeless people, or be involved in soup kitchens. Sustainable lifestyles, and this we can look at in our whole school community, how we do this. The sustainability of our buildings. How do we use lighting, air conditioning, heating? Do we insulate? The use of water, transportation, the food and diet. What do we buy? Do we reduce food waste? Do we reduce meat consumption? Composting, consumer practices. Are we always buying new stuff? Do we eliminate the use of plastic, single-use plastic and styrofoam? And do we practice correct recycling as much as possible? A lot of challenges there. Ecological education, where we can do this very much in our school community. Develop and implement a Laudato Si education plan. Weave Laudato Si into all our communications, newsletters, etc. We involve our community in what we do in our school. And then equitable access to education. Are there unrepresented groups, disabled groups? Have we got alternative education programs that we can try and introduce that are culturally sensitive and promote human rights and dignity in our schools? So there's a lot we can do in terms of ecological education in our school community. Ecological spirituality. There's a whole season of creation event, and promote the season of creation events in our whole school calendar. Include the themes in liturgical celebrations, produce study guides, reflective prayer material. Praying in nature, do we ever go out and do that? Do we have a reflective space outdoors in our school area? And do we co-host with other groups season of creation event, or with other community or religious community? So we can share a lot in that way. And finally, engagement and participatory action. And this is where advocating and advocacy can come into our whole school community for social and ecological causes. School groups can be involved in this, engaging with the wider public, the local newspapers, the local news media, with the local, develop collective responses with the local church leaders and local officials. And one we need to look at, especially when disasters happen, what resilience are we building up in our school, or in our school community, or in our local community, so that when something disasters does happen, we can handle the situation. You take the fires that have just happened in Hawaii, and the alarm systems didn't work, etc., etc. We're going to know these hot days and these floods are going to happen. We've got to build up resilience, and how do we cope when these certain and severe effects happen? So that resilience, I think, is something we need to look at from a management perspective, etc. So that was a very quick overview of the Laudato Si action platform. One other thing that's come out in the last year or so is the letter movie by Pope, which we can show our communities. But what we are challenged to think is our thinking, to move from kingship, this whole ego mentality, to the eco. And it's not just stewardship that I am in charge, but I am king and king of everything in our world today. So there is the big challenge. What is possible for the future? So my last question to you is, where do we go from here? And the challenge is that no spirituality, whatever you might call it, is valid if it is simply a personal piosity or devotion. Every genuine spirituality, and this is what Pope Francis is challenging us, must result in action. And if we bring a spirituality to it, the divine calls us to mystical activism, to bring beauty and healing to our world. Do we ever get time to be silent, to be aware of the awe and mystery around us? And that gives us energy to get involved and to do something. So that is what mystical activism is about. If we think of Jesus of Nazareth from the Gospel, in the Christian Bible, he went apart many, many times to be alone with his God, with his Father. Do we allow that to happen in our lives? Do we allow our students to have times of silence where they can have awe and mystery coming into their life? Not just the cell phone or the mobile phone all the time. So, I'm going to play a few little movies as a challenge to you.
I believe that one of the biggest examples of separation syndrome in our lives is how we have such a profound disposability consciousness in this culture. And I use the example of when you say you're going to throw something away, where's away? There's no such thing. And where away actually is social justice issues and environmental justice issues. Every plastic bag, plastic cup, plastic to-go container, that is the petroleum complex in Africa, Ecuador, Colombia, Alaska, you name it. Every paper bag, paper plate, paper napkin, that is a forest. Every thing that is called waste or disposable is the ways in which we are saying that it is acceptable to throw our planet and its people away. When I started thinking about disposability consciousness, I went and asked a lot of Native people that I know if in their original language, if they had any words for waste, disposable, or trash. And I have yet to find in any traditional language words for waste, disposable, or trash. Because all traditional knowledge knows that there's no such thing. I saw a great sign once that said it's only called waste if you're not using it properly. And we have a wasteful consciousness. We have a disposability consciousness. We've lost our connection to the sacred. And for me, disposables are one of the huge magnifiers of how we've lost our connection to the sacred. Because you don't walk up to a tree and go, wow, I wonder how many paper plates I could get out of that puppy. You know, we don't think that way, but our actions are doing that. I invite people to look at everything in their lives and look at where does waste mentality and disposability consciousness, how has it infiltrated my life? And I see it as one of the ways in which we all have internalized oppression. Because those forms of oppression are disconnect. Those forms of disconnect, they work best when they just subtly weave themselves into the fabric of our lives, where we just take it for granted that we're going to go to the coffee shop and get coffee that came from an exploited community somewhere where a forest was destroyed for a monoculture, put it in a paper cup that used to be a forest, put a plastic lid on top of it that used to be an indigenous community somewhere in a beautiful area, drink it, and then throw it away where it goes back and pollutes a nature community or a human community at the end. I am so fiercely passionate about it because I know in my heart that as long as we are trashing the planet and trashing each other, a healthy and holistic and healed world is not possible. We cannot have peace on the earth unless we also have peace with the earth. Our disposability consciousness is a weapon of mass destruction. I have walked in the clear cuts. I have been in the oil pits. I have seen the weapons of mass destruction called disposability consciousness. And if we want to heal the world, we have to begin to choose tools of mass compassion, where we are reusing everything, where we are reconnecting to riding our bike, getting out and walking, using less energy, not leaving lights on here and there and not thinking about it. When I first came to the city after coming down from the tree, I was walking around in the neighborhood one day, and I noticed all these lights on in homes that weren't people in homes where people weren't even there. And I know that it's because of that mentality that we were taught that, you know, the big scary criminals will think somebody's home if there's a light on. I'm like, if I lived in a tree for 2 years and I know nobody's home, I bet those big scary criminals know nobody's home. And I say that and I laugh because it's that fear mentality that makes us to be these wasteful consumers. And I saw that that is this disposability consciousness that we're just throwing everything away. And
So there's a challenge. There will be no peace on earth until there is peace with the earth. We can't just blow up and do what we like with our planet. It's got personhood status, and we have to become weapons of mass compassion. Incredible words from that lady. And look, here's a quote from her. It is when we look at all of life and we feel that sacred connection that we begin to change how we live in the world. And as a result, we begin to change how others live in the world. Now, to serve and preserve the earth. So this is a very important quote from Wendell Berry. He's an Episcopalian minister in the United States. We cannot live harmlessly. To live each day, we must daily break the body and shed the blood of creation. We've got to dig the earth. We've got to eat, etc. But when we do this knowingly, skillfully, reverently, it is a sacrament, a method of God's grace to us. But when we do it ignorantly, greedily, clumsily, destructively, it is desecration. And in such a desecration, we condemn ourselves to spiritual and moral loneliness and others who want. And that is something that is happening in our world of today. So here's the challenge to you.
It's 3:23 in the morning, and I'm awake because my great-great-grandchildren won't let me sleep. My great-great-grandchildren ask me in dreams, "What did you do while the planet was plundered? What did you do when the earth was unraveling? Surely you did something when the seasons started failing, as the mammals, reptiles, birds were all dying. Did you fill the streets with protest when democracy was stolen? What did you do once you knew?"
So the challenge is, what is stopping us when we know what we have to do, but we don't do what we know we have to do?
When I think about how we've gotten to this place of being so separated from the earth and from each other and from our choices, it seems like there's many prongs that have gotten us to this point. I think one of the core elements, though, is actually quite simple, which is fear. And fear is simple and profound, just like love is simple and profound. And fear will drive us to make choices that our hearts don't long to make, that our spirits don't long to make. Fear will shut down the voice of the heart and spirit and collapse us into beings without meaning and without value. I see in this culture in particular, how that manifests is our addiction to comfortability. We are birthing an addict society. I went through a time in my life where I was a major drug and alcohol addict. And so I know on a very real level what addiction is. And as a society, we are being birthed into an addiction culture where you need consumerism, you need comfortability, and you go through the same withdrawals and all these same things that you go through as a drug addict or an alcoholic. And I see even the most conscious among us making the most unconscious choices out of our addiction to comfortability. I love using the example of the caterpillar becoming the butterfly, because the caterpillar's got a pretty cool life, you know? It's chill, it lives on its food source, it doesn't have too many threats, it's usually camouflage so that whatever birds or things might come after it, it's slightly safe. And then it has this weird calling that defies description that says there's something more for you. And there's no rationale or reasoning. And if we are, in many ways, we are that caterpillar going, man, I don't want to leave this leaf. This is cool. I got it made here, you know? And yet there's this deeper calling that tells the caterpillar, there's something more for you. And then the caterpillar has to trust this great unknown, this great mystery. And fear keeps us from trusting the great mystery within ourselves. For me, the divine is the great mystery, that we are all manifestations of this great mystery. I take a breath and I am amazed at the great mystery that just allowed me to breathe and everything that happens for that magic to happen. But this caterpillar follows the great mystery, and then it pulls the cocoon from within itself. It goes into its deepest depths and pulls this cocoon out and then wraps itself in it. And we are afraid of what's inside of ourselves. When something comes up that we don't like, click on the television, go out to eat, go party with friends, go shopping. Whatever it is that we don't have to take a good hard look at what's inside of ourselves. But the caterpillar knows that there's something more, even though there's no reason for it, and goes, okay, I'm going to do this work. It's uncomfortable, but I'm going to do this work. And then it wraps itself in there, and it's tight, and it's dark, and there's nowhere to run, and there's no way to sidetrack itself. It's just dealing with its innermost depths. And that process liquefies it. That's not a comfortable, touchy-feely kind of thing, right? That's not like, oh, and it's all going to be better. Like, that's some hardcore work. And then there's a point, though, where that cocoon gets comfortable, too. It might be a little cramped and dark in there, and I see that happening in our evolution as people. It gets a little cramped and dark in there, but it's also comfortable and safe now. We've created this little world around us that we can just call ourselves enlightened and stay there, versus taking that enlightenment and having the courage to take it out into a world that's not like anything we can imagine. And the last thing that happens after the caterpillar begins to liquefy is its head pops off. And then its head absorbs into this liquid being that it's becoming. And if you take a cell from that liquid before its head pops off, it only reproduces part of a butterfly. And after its head incorporates into its entire soupy being, you can take a cell, any cell, and it recreates an entire new butterfly. And then the caterpillar has to push through the barriers of comfortability again and trust that whatever's outside that space is going to be a magical world. And then it takes a moment of grace to fan its wings, and then it takes a leap. And I think that our fear consistently keeps us from that process, whether it's at the leaf stage or in the cocoon stage, or where we get out and we flap our wings and say, that edge looks a little scary, I'm just gonna chill here. You know?
So there's the challenge, the fear that keeps us from trying to bring about a better world. But we can't do this of our own. We are all in this together. So it's important, no matter what we try and do in the school community or in our home or by ourselves, whatever, we involve other people, we get into a group and we work together to bring this about. That gives us an idea of a community feeling about it. So we are all in this together. And the challenge is the eyes of the future are looking back at us and they are praying for us to see beyond our own time. I've heard a saying that we are living off the credit cards of our great-grandchildren. We can't afford to do that. We've got to leave a better world for our great-grandchildren. There are some ideas on the screen. We've gone through all of this, but there's the Laudato Si action platform you could discuss. There's a whole universe story you might discuss, etc. No, what has struck you? What can you share with each other? And how do we all take this forward?